Welcome back to another Talking Point, the space where investors come together to learn, grow, and ultimately make magic. Now, the most important part of the whole process is, of course, learning and moving forward all the time, which is where we come in to help and guide you. Now, for those of you who are new to our channel and our videos, the Wealth Masters Club has been in operation since 2003, and we've been helping ordinary South Africans to invest in property through specialized trusts using the right people to make your investment journey a little easier. Now, joining me today once again is Emile Grobbelaar, our resident property expert, and he'll be talking a little bit more about the specific talking point, which is the offer to purchase. Now, because our core focus is investment in property, this is one of the most important documents that you as a homeowner or investor will ever need. So, Emile, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to our quick chat.
Hello, Damien. Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Now, Emile, let's specifically look at the offer to purchase now. To what degree can a buyer change or request edits on an offer to purchase? So I think the perception is because it's a legal document, it is what it is, and you need to accept that. So is that the case, or is there scope for a buyer to make changes or edits that will suit them?
Damien, anything can be changed in that legal agreement, ultimately, as long as it doesn't break any laws. You can't put in a clause in a contract that is in contravention of any act of South Africa. So you can put in whatever you and the seller and or purchaser agrees to that needs to be enforced by this agreement. Obviously, it goes through an attorney as well, so that will be legally recorded. So as long as it doesn't contravene any act, then you can put it in. One thing where it becomes a little bit more difficult is when you deal with the new developments and you buy something that is not yet built. So the developer obviously draws up a contract in line with the new development, in line with what is being prescribed as what you are buying without a property that is in existence as yet. So on that side, you'll probably have less leniency regarding changes in the sale agreement.
Now, Emile, if we just look at the basics, what is the purpose of an offer to purchase and who is it actually protecting?
Damien, yeah, it's not a one-sided thing protecting only one part. It is just to put in writing the agreement between the seller and purchaser, and it is being signed and initialed against any important clauses, so that both parties can see that the other party is aware of what is in the sale agreement and that they agree to all the terms and conditions contained in it. And one very, very important thing that must be remembered is when you do sign a sale agreement, it is a legal and binding contract. A lot of people, or especially young people that buy their first property, go out, make offers on properties without them really wanting it, and then they just sit out and wait, you know, that the time period for bond application passes, so they can just carry on again and go and look at other properties. They must be very careful about that. Some agencies do enforce their right to claim commission against those people if they do not do what is supposed to be done regarding bond application that is stipulated in the sale agreement as well. So it's very important that when you do sign it, make sure that you agree with everything that is written in that contract, and that it is the same. The meaning is the same as what was agreed with the seller as well, that it is not worded differently and you understand it a different way than what it actually means in the contract, the one that you are signing.
Fantastic. Now, Emile, if we're going to look at purchasing property, number one, as a property that you're going to live in, and number two, as an investment property, what are the specific clauses that you need to look out for when signing an offer to purchase?
Damien, the first thing for people buying to live in is obviously they want vacant occupation. The person living in the property, i.e. tenant or owner, seller, needs to be out. Otherwise, you can't move in. If it is a tenant and you don't put in a contract that the seller needs to notify the tenant to move out by a certain date, then you as new owner will need to do it. And furthermore, if they didn't move out even after they were given notice, then you are the responsible person as the purchaser or new owner rather to evict them. And that just causes problems. So if you are buying to live in yourselves, make sure you stipulate vacant occupation. If it is not vacant by the time that registration is supposed to happen, then you inform the attorneys. They will then freeze that registration until the people have left the premises, until you can take occupation. And, obviously the seller wants his money, so he will assist as much as possible to get the people out. But if you are dealing with a property that is tenanted and you have tenants that is not willing to move, it can really delay your whole purchase. On the other hand, for investor, you want people in, you want people that pay rent. So make sure that if you do buy a tenanted property, that at least they are good tenants. Check the payment record, ask it from, well, the seller or his rental agent, and check it out. Check whether there are good people with good credit records and good payment records. So once that has happened, then you stipulate it's fine. You will buy the lease agreement with the property. The Huurgaardverkoop Act also stipulate that when you sell a property, the lease agreement goes with the sale. So the new owner will then be the landlord of the current existing lease agreement. So he will just carry on with it. But a very, very important thing for investors as well, if they get to a point of registration date as well, and you need either a deposit with regards to the tenancy of the property, or you need keys or anything, stipulate in the sale agreement an extra condition that if handover is not completed and confirmed by the sales agent with the attorney, that the attorney will not pay out the money to the seller. It has happened before where the money was paid out, the seller didn't even pay over the deposit, didn't provide the keys, nothing, and the buyer then sits with problems, and it's very hard to enforce anything like that afterwards. So just make sure that handover has been completed and stipulate in the sale agreement that the attorney needs to verify it with the agent. That puts the onus on the attorney to make sure that that is done. Then you can hold him responsible as well if that was not done.
I think that is very, very important information and stuff that people often overlook. Now, Emile, in your article that you wrote, you also mentioned including a specific amount for an agent commission. So why do you think this is important versus just having a percentage, for instance?
Yeah, a lot of people, stipulate a percentage plus VAT inclusive. The seller think that the percentage is VAT inclusive, where the agent think it is VAT exclusive, or the agent think that the percentage is calculated on the asking price and not on the offer price. And that is why the seller, who is usually the person paying the agent's commission, calculated and write in the amount when they sign the sale agreement, just to make sure that the amount is exactly what he knows it needs to be, and that the agent, who also signs the agreement, checks it and makes sure that it is correct as well.
Now, Emile, I've heard a lot of stories about people buying a home, and then, in the process, they have a verbal agreement with the seller about what should and what shouldn't be included in the sale price. And then when it comes to the point of taking occupation, they realize that some of the fixtures and fittings may have been removed despite having that handshake agreement. So what do you suggest in these situations? How should that be handled in the whole sales process?
Damien, the easy answer is anything that was said means nothing. Whatever is said and agreed to needs to be written down. We all know that verbal agreements does carry some weight, but how do you prove it? How do you prove that whatever fixture was there when the property was bought by you? How do you prove the agreement? He says, she says situation. So bottom line is whatever is written down is what will be accepted. Whatever is written down is agreed to by both parties by their hand signature as well. So verbal agreements, unless you have a recording proving it, you're going to have a very, very difficult time in establishing that the seller agreed to it.
I just want to talk a little bit now about the compliance certificates, because these are obviously quite crucial for a transfer to go through. So in terms of those certificates of compliance, how long are they actually valid for once they have been signed off by the relevant parties?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Damien, they're not crucial to the registration. It is law that they must be valid and done by registered people. So a transaction cannot happen if those are not provided. The seller pays for it. The seller needs to provide it. Electrical, plumbing, some instances, BTL certificates as well, electric fencing, for instance, gas certificates. So there's quite a few, but it is law. It must be there, and the transaction cannot be registered without them. The period of validity for a certificate is 3 months. The professional that issued the certificate needs to be registered. For instance, Department of Labor, electricians, plumbers, they all fall within the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So they need to do it in accordance with that act as well. So yeah, definitely only registered professional people must be used for that as well.
So let's say there's a situation where a certificate is signed off, but a problem occurs relating to that service. Let's take, for instance, you mentioned electrical. If we look at that, if there's an electrical fault and that causes damage to the home or the property, who's ultimately responsible for the cost that's been incurred as a result of that?
If you can prove that the wiring, for instance, was not up to standard and actually falls outside the criterion that is set by the Health and Safety Act, that the electrician actually approved it where it was not up to standard, then the seller and the electrician is responsible. And you definitely need to take that legal, because they are bound by law. And I mean, their registration can be withdrawn, that they don't practice anymore. But you will have to prove that wiring, for instance, wasn't up to standard as stipulated in the codes and occupational health and safety.
And Emile, second last question. We spoke previously about the new Property Practitioners Act. How does that now protect the buyers and the sellers when it comes to offers to purchase if there are disputes or disagreements?
Damien, yeah, if there are disputes and disagreements, you know, there's quite a wide range of disputes and disagreements that can come from a sale agreement. But the one major thing that was never law and came into law now is with regards to disclosure of the condition of the property. We all know about the foot stewards clause, and a lot of sellers are under the impression that, you know, whatever is there, it is as such, and I don't have to worry. But right now they do have to disclose if there's anything that they know about, specifically the latent defects that you can't really see and comes out later on. If they were aware of it and they didn't disclose it, they can be taken to task and they will be liable and responsible for repair and all costs of repairing whatever the issue is. So I would say that is the most important thing. They must, just for protection of themselves, disclose whatever the issues are. And they will, if it comes out they didn't do it, they will be taken to task, and that is now law. The foot stewards clause will not cover that anymore. There's even another one where they've made no representation of anything. It doesn't matter, they were supposed to disclose it, and it can be proven. You know, some things are logically, whatever there is issue-wise, condition-wise in the property, you know, logic tells you it should have been there a long time. If the guy was living there himself, he should have known about it because it happens. So you won't be able to hide behind that anymore. That is a very, very important thing that came into effect, and then that was a big point of disagreements and disputes in sale agreements previously.
And finally, Emile, any other tips for investors or buyers who are currently looking at purchasing and they're busy sitting with their offer to purchase? Like, what do you suggest the core things that they look out for?
Well, first of all, I would definitely say that, you know, make sure that whatever you want in the transaction is stipulated in writing, and make sure that it is correctly stipulated and agreed to. One clause that Wealth Masters always preached is that with regards to your finances, make sure that your clause is in there that you can accept it if you want to. If you don't like it and you don't want to, then you don't accept it. So just make sure that whatever is in there is, first of all, legal and what you want. Most agreements out there are set up for the general public to buy a property to live in. So if you are an investor, make sure you make the necessary changes with regards to an investment property. As I mentioned previously, specifically with occupation, to get rid of tenants if they're not good tenants before you take occupation. And also something to keep in mind if you are buying for investment as well. If the property is vacant, take occupation earlier to prepare the property, make, to do maintenance, and get permission from the seller in writing, once again in the sale agreement, that you are allowed to take occupation and start advertising and marketing to place a tenant, even while it is still registered under seller's name, so that by the time you are the owner legally, that you will get the income and he will benefit before that from that tenancy if you are able to place somebody. So yeah, just make sure that whatever is in there is what you agree to, and yeah, make the changes to suit whatever the purpose is of the property that you are buying.
Thank you so much for your time, Emile. You've definitely added some valuable information to our knowledge banks. But as we always say at the Wealth Masters Club, having the right information is only half the battle. It's important that you have the right team to help you along the process and to keep your interest at heart. So Emile's obviously one of the very valuable members of our team who focuses on property. And we've got a lot more that'll help you and guide you through the journey. So now if this topic has interested you and you would like to find a little bit more about what we do and how we do it, then join us this weekend for our free online training where we will show you how to invest in property using other people's time, other people's skill, and other people's money. And the best part is that if you structure your affairs in the right way, then your assets and wealth will be protected, not just for you or your kids, but your future generations as well. So check out the link in the description below, book today, and make sure you start your investment journey. Emile, thank you very much. We will chat to you again soon.
Only a pleasure, Damien. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. We'll see you next week.